Is the European single market being bypassed by a clever web of shadow imports? As of today, Thursday, July 30, 2026, the European Union is expected to launch a formal probe into construction material imports arriving from the Balkan region. This is not just a routine check. Authorities suspect that Chinese manufacturers are using Balkan nations as a strategic backdoor to avoid the heavy tariffs imposed by the EU. By routing goods through non-EU countries in the Balkans, these companies can potentially mislabel their products or claim different origins, allowing them to flood the European market with artificially low-priced materials. This move by the EU signals a hardening stance against what they perceive as unfair competition and systematic tariff evasion that threatens the very foundations of European industrial stability. To understand why this is happening now, we have to look at the recent shifts in global trade patterns. For months, there has been growing suspicion among EU regulators that a surge of construction materials, including steel and cement, has been flowing through the Balkans at rates that do not align with local consumption. This pattern suggests a sophisticated strategy where Chinese-made goods are shipped to Balkan ports, undergo minimal processing or simply receive new documentation, and then enter the EU as Balkan origin products. This allows them to dodge the specific anti-dumping duties that the EU has placed on Chinese imports. As we move into the second half of 2026, the pressure on the European Commission to protect its domestic industries has reached a boiling point, making this investigation an inevitability rather than a possibility. The impact of this suspected tariff dodging is being felt immediately across the European continent. Local manufacturers of steel, cement, and other essential construction materials are facing an uphill battle. When Chinese goods enter the market at prices that do not reflect the true cost of production plus tariffs, they create an uneven playing field. European companies, which must adhere to strict EU environmental and labor standards, simply cannot compete with these artificially deflated prices. This is leading to a decline in profit margins for European firms and is causing significant anxiety within the industrial sectors of Germany, France, and Italy. We are seeing a direct threat to the livelihoods of thousands of workers in the traditional heavy industry sectors as the market becomes saturated with cheap, non-compliant imports. This investigation is much more than a simple customs dispute. It is a flashpoint in the broader geopolitical struggle between the West and China. As the EU attempts to secure its economic borders, it is increasingly running into the strategic ambitions of Beijing. China has been aggressively expanding its presence in the Balkans through massive infrastructure investments, often creating a close economic dependency. This makes the Balkan region a high-stakes arena where trade policy and geopolitical influence collide. The EU's decision to probe these imports is a clear message that Brussels is no longer willing to tolerate the erosion of its trade barriers through third-party countries. This tension is likely to escalate as more sectors, beyond just construction, come under the EU's regulatory microscope. What does this mean for the average citizen? While the headlines focus on high-level trade policy, the ripple effects reach the local level. If the EU successfully blocks these imports, we might see a stabilization of prices for domestic materials, but it could also lead to a temporary increase in construction costs for new housing and infrastructure projects. Conversely, if the EU fails to act, the long-term result could be the permanent erosion of the European manufacturing base. We are essentially watching a high-stakes balancing act. The EU must protect its industries without causing a massive spike in the cost of living or construction. The outcome of this probe will set a precedent for how the EU handles similar issues in the automotive and green energy sectors in the years to come. Looking ahead, the next few months will be critical. We expect the European Commission to release a preliminary report detailing the extent of the tariff evasion. This will likely lead to much stricter rules of origin requirements for any goods entering the EU via the Balkan route. We might see more frequent inspections at border crossings and more rigorous auditing of manufacturing processes in the Balkan region. Furthermore, this could trigger a series of retaliatory trade measures from China, potentially sparking a wider trade conflict. The EU is essentially drawing a line in the sand, and the response from Beijing will determine the direction of European trade policy for the remainder of the decade. In conclusion, the investigation into Balkan construction material imports is a defining moment for the European Union's economic sovereignty. It highlights the evolving challenges of a globalized economy where trade routes can be exploited to circumvent local laws. Whether this leads to a more protected European market or a wider global trade war remains to be seen. One thing is certain, the era of unchecked, opaque imports through third-party nations is coming to an end in Europe. As regulators tighten their grip, the world is watching to see if the EU can effectively defend its industries in an increasingly complex and competitive global landscape.